the different reasons that people would be meditating for, but based on the suttas, meditation should help develop understanding. So it's not about switching things off and absorbing yourself in some states whereby nothing else will be present in your awareness. It's really about surmounting the states, surmounting the unwholesome states, surmounting the states that cause us to suffer through understanding them. So really, practice of meditation should be a practice of developing your mind, of finding a place in your mind that then you can maintain throughout the day, even when you are not actively meditating. So, for example, and that's why in other talks we would often say that guided meditation, guiding contemplation, we would use it interchangeably, because it's pretty much a right type of contemplation that then results in certain imperturbability of your mind, and in that way it's a meditation. So, for example, we can, like now, you can contemplate, pick up a state that bothers you throughout the day, or causes you issues, whatever that is, and then you can reflect on it and learn how to discern it rightly. So, like you can imagine, for example, the anger. Let's say anger. That can be our example here. So that can be your meditation. You can set some quiet time aside, prevent any disturbances, half an hour, whatever you can do, and then actively think upon the present experience without losing the sight of that present experience. So you want to learn how to think without greed, aversion, and delusion. So the phenomenon of anger, you don't have to be angry when you want to do this meditation, but just bring it to the fore. Remember when you are angry. So you're investigating the phenomenon of anger, the phenomenon of ill will. So you don't want to be trying to get rid of it or imagine a state whereby it will never arise. You want to understand it. You want to see to what extent that which makes you angry is inevitable, and then to what extent there is your responsibility in regard to it. So in terms of anger, just imagine the times when you were angry, and you can let it endure, let it be present for a while. Don't overthink it, but certainly don't try to not think it either. So you can ask yourself, like for example, imagine when you were angry. Then you can imagine many other times if you were angry or irritated. If you're not getting angry, maybe irritated or annoyed. What is in common to all of those experiences of anger, of irritation? What is a common thread that unites them all? What is the nature? So you can answer this question in many ways, and it's not crucial to always answer it in the same way, because really you're investigating. So sometimes your investigation will lead you to different aspects of it, of phenomenon. But just keep pressing with the questions while the phenomenon is enduring. So the phenomenon of anger, all the times I was angry, irritated, annoyed, what is in common to all of those experiences. See what you come up with. One of the most obvious things that is in common is it's unpleasant. Every single time you experienced anger, it's unpleasant. That experience is not nice. So then you can ask a second question. Can you be angry without that little sting of displeasure? Is there any anger that is truly, truly enjoyable and pleasant experience of anger? Now you might have like a secondary experience of pleasure, like getting revenge or getting back at someone through anger, and then you get that satisfaction. But that's not what we are talking about. We're talking about the very first, originally enduring phenomenon of anger. Is that pleasant or unpleasant? It's always unpleasant. There's no single exception, because if it weren't unpleasant, say like this, somebody does something that upsets you, that irritates you. So that's your anger. You're irritated, you got angry because you were upset for whatever reason. Now say on some other occasion you're in a good mood and somebody does the same thing to you, but now you really did not experience that sting of discomfort through that upset, and you're not angry. You might even laugh it off. So you realize that anger then, it's not directly determined by what's done to you. It's really determined by whether you're experiencing discomfort on account of what's done to you. So it's really the discomfort, coming in contact, having discomfort arise in your experience. That's where your anger is rooted in. It's not rooted in circumstances that bring that anger forward. So every time you are angry, irritated, annoyed, means to some degree you're upset. Doesn't matter how refined that upset might be, it's still the upset, which means there is a degree of discomfort, displeasure, unpleasant feeling. Every single time. And every single time you will get upset in the future, there will be the common thread. So then really, when you're getting angry over in the present, when you've been get angry over in the past, or you will get angry over in the future, it's you being liable to discomfort on the emotional level. So you experiencing unpleasant feelings is what makes you angry. And don't try now jump and look into an immediate solution. How do I stop doing this? Because it's not on the level of doing as you would be performing any other action. It's subtler than that. You stop doing it by understanding it. So you stop doing it by ceasing to act out of ignorance of it. Those are the ways to stop doing it. So how do you stop acting out of ignorance of your anger? Well, you stop ignoring the true nature of anger. You learn how to maintain the mindfulness of it, how to allow it to endure, and you dwell on it. You actively make the effort, as we said when we started this, to think it concretely, think it properly in the present moment, not ignore it, not justify it, not provide random emotionally satisfying answers to it. So by dwelling on the nature of anger, clarifying it further and further and further, undoing all the layers of ignoring that you developed through blindly, ignorantly acting out of anger all this time. And mind you, all this, what we were describing, is the same principle towards sensuality, lust, towards anything unwholesome. So you have to restrain yourself first. When you're angry, don't give in to anger. When you haven't been giving in to anger, then you can start reflecting on the nature of anger correctly, like what we just done. So every time you're angry, every time there was an anger in your experience, it was rooted in discomfort. So can they be pressed further? Can you investigate further? What is in common to every single discomfort that you ever experienced? What kind of attitude was in the background of it? Your attitude. Every time you encountered unpleasant feeling or a prospect of an unpleasant feeling, what was the background of it? What was the common thread through all these different phenomena of unpleasant experiences? In the past, in the future, doesn't matter how many, how few. If any phenomena of unpleasant nature has arisen, it must have taken in a certain nature of being unpleasant. So what is that nature? Practically speaking, not theoretically. Practically speaking, what is in common to every displeasure you ever went through and you will ever go through? It's not wanted, isn't it? Every time there was a genuinely emotionally experienced discomfort, it's not wanted. That's what's in common. You resist it. You want it to not be there. You feel entitled to wanting it to not be there. So every time you were angry means every of those times you were experiencing a form of discomfort. Every time there's a form of discomfort, every time there's a form of unpleasant feeling, every time there is a resistance to it. So then you can safely assume that whenever there is an experience of anger, there is resistance to it. You're trying to get rid of it. Why is that? Why is that, and what are you trying to get rid of it? What exactly should not be there from that point of view? Is it circumstances that upset us, that caused us that discomfort, or the discomfort itself? What is your craving aiming at, craving to get rid of? It's always a discomfort. Even if you are aiming at the circumstances, you do so to remove the basis for that displeasure that you are being touched by. So what if, theoretically speaking now, you can imagine to not resist the displeasure, to stop resisting it. So not like battle the circumstances, defend, attack, prevent, but just internally, whenever there is a discomfort, you're mindful of it and make sure there is no giving in to the attitude of, I don't want this. Doesn't mean you want it, but means you stop not wanting it. That's the subtlety of the middle way. Opposite of wanting, opposite of not wanting is not wanting. Sorry, let's put it like this. Wanting is not the opposite of not wanting, phenomenologically speaking. You want to be very accurate, which you must. Opposite of not wanting is the absence of not wanting. It's not the presence of wanting. So in other words, when there is resistance to unpleasant feeling, doesn't mean now you must learn how to want the unpleasant feeling in order to get rid of that resistance. It only means you need to stop resisting it. You don't need to overdo it and go the other way. That's why when the Buddha said he crossed the shore by not pushing forward, by not pulling backwards, by not standing still. When they say, well, how did you do that? He said, well, I didn't push forward by not pushing forward. I didn't pull backwards by not pulling backwards. He didn't say, I didn't pull backwards by pushing forward. So the absence of pulling backwards is how you stop pulling backwards. The absence of resisting the unpleasant feeling is how you stop resisting it. So when people say hate is only conquered by love, that's not true. Absolutely. Hate is conquered by non-hate. Love is conquered by non-love. So you don't be swinging from one end to the other, or rather, you won't be able to help but to initially. But if you start discerning that, if you learn how to not resist anger, that doesn't mean you must love the circumstances that caused it or anything like it. You just need to stop resisting it. And you will stop resisting it when you truly understand the nature of unpleasant feeling. So let's get back to the practical side of it as we've been discussing it. Remember all the times you were angry. Again, bring it back. We drifted away, bring it back. So every single time you were irritated, annoyed, angry, upset, every one of those times it was unpleasant. So being irritated, angry, upset means being exposed to displeasure, enduring it, being touched by it. So see, we already, to a degree, transcended, went beyond the particular circumstances that might have made you angry or upset. Who said what happened to you, all that, it's really secondary. You are angry not because there is displeasure present. You are angry because the present displeasure is not wanted. You take that for granted, then your actions, angry actions, will be coming out of it. So anger is phenomenologically secondary to your resistance to displeasure. Anger is your reaction to your own resistance. Basically, you resist the discomfort, and that in itself is quite uncomfortable. So then you add another layer of then trying to get rid of your attempts of getting rid of the unpleasant feeling. So as I said, what if you just stop resisting the unpleasant feeling? Just to the degree you've been resisting it, you stop resisting it. Just to the degree that there is the attitude of this is not wanted, to that degree you remove that attitude. So you can't do that intentionally, as in you can't decide, make a decision, I'll stop resisting it. Because that attitude precedes, your intentions are a result of that attitude. That's why the Buddha would say he avoids acting upon intentions that are rooted in unwholesome, and he acts upon intentions that are rooted in wholesome. Wholesome is absence of aversion. So you will stop maintaining that attitude when you fully discern that in regard to which your attitude is maintained, unpleasant feeling. So we imagine times we were angry, then you might see what the common thread in that is. It's the discomfort. See what the common thread in every single discomfort is. It's the unpleasant, it's the resisting of that unpleasant feeling. So this is not like something that will lead us to some sort of great conclusion. Well, it might lead you to some great conclusions, but it's more like the value of this is in being repetitively done. This self-questioning and reflection, contemplation, meditation. So that's what Buddha, he keeps reviewing his mind for greed, aversion, delusion. So it's not like you do it once, you provide the answers and that's it, you're done. No, then you do it again. And certainly you do it when the context that you have developed through providing these answers ceases. When you got distracted from it and so on, you redo it. Now you might arrive at different contexts, but the point is you keep doing it. Because through doing it, you're removing your own layers of ignoring it, of being unfamiliar with it. So one of the main things that everyone, well, the undeveloped minds are unfamiliar with is the nature of the unpleasant feeling. So we were looking at the nature of anger. They brought us to the nature of discomfort. They brought us to the nature of resisting the discomfort. So you could even say, what is the nature of resistance then? Attitude of resistance, craving for things to not be. What is in common to every single one of those? It's in common that they're bound up with every single time you experienced unpleasant feeling. So that begs the question then, can you experience unpleasant feeling without trying to get rid of it? And that's pretty much your first step towards practical application of this very contemplation. So you're sitting quietly, meditating like this, contemplating, but now when you go back to the world, when unpleasantness touches you, and inevitably will, you remember to try what you've been discerning. What if I stop resisting this? This, not the circumstances. Like I'm restrained in regard to the circumstances, but they were never the problem. He said this or that. That's not the problem. Is that the discomfort touches me, and automatically upon being touched, I simultaneously don't want that. Why is that? Why do I maintain the view that I'm in a position to prevent feelings from manifesting? And that's the thing that we arrived at now. Could you be resisting anything if that thing hasn't arisen beforehand? And when I say beforehand, I mean right there at the same time, but before your attitude, or rather more fundamental to your attitude, the basis for your attitude. So your attitude of resisting displeasure is simultaneous to displeasure, but displeasure is first in that structural, phenomenological manner. So would you be able to be resisting any feeling if that feeling is not there on its own, manifested for you to resist it? So bring it to mind anytime you experience any form of discomfort emotionally. Like even now, just abstractly you think about the word pain, and it already has a significance, implicit significance of not wanted, to be prevented. So can you stop that? Can you not go and want pain? Can you just stop not wanting of it? Can you be indifferent to it? That's basically what we are saying. And the good news is you can if you understand the nature of it. Did you have any say in its arising? If so, why did it then arise in the first place, when it's not wanted from the start? So you didn't really, because if you did, it wouldn't have arisen. So unpleasant feelings then arise on their own. Is that a problem? Because as we gave the example when we started this. On many occasions, the same things that sometimes make you suffer arise, but you don't feel unpleasant on account of them. So those things, seemingly cause that displeasure, are not always unpleasant. Which means sometimes they might be, sometimes they might not be. But so they're only the problem when they're unpleasant. Which means then the problem is not the things that cause you displeasure. The problem is the displeasure. And displeasure doesn't always arise. But when it does, it's a problem because of your attitude of trying to get rid of it. So would you be able to maintain the attitude of trying to get rid of the displeasure if you're not holding on to a view that you can get rid of that displeasure? If you truly, completely realize that the domain of displeasure or pleasure, the domain of feeling, is inaccessible to you, would you still be acting as if you have access to it? Would you even entertain such notions in your thoughts? So the feelings, on account of which you have attitude of wanting them or not wanting them and so on, you have no say in their arising. You have no say whatsoever. So why do you then maintain the attitude as if you do have a say? Because you, as we just discovered, you wouldn't be trying to get rid of the unpleasant feeling unless there is an implicit assumption that you can get rid of it. But when you look at the unpleasant feeling, you realize it has arisen on its own, fully enclosed, independent of you. And you have no say in it. All you can do is secondarily complain about it, try to get rid of it, prevent it, affect the circumstances that have kind of indirectly propped it up. So why do you then still hold on to the attitude of not wanting it, of trying to get rid of it, craving for it to not be? See, here now, the mind would expect some direct answer that will undo this thing altogether right away. But the actual answer, I mean, it can be a direct answer, but what that answer will tell you is that it's not because you're making some sort of a mistake once and then you provide an answer and the mistake is removed and you never ever go back to it. It's because of your other underlying attitude. There is even more fundamental attitude to the attitude of craving for getting rid of the unpleasant feeling. And that attitude is the attitude of ignorance. Attitude of ignoring the nature of the feeling, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. That's why ignorance is the most fundamental existential error, for which every single human being is responsible. Well, every single being is responsible. So it's through ignoring the nature of feeling, nature of, as we described it, nature of it to be arising on its own, manifested to you, for you, but you are not its creator. You have no say in the way these feelings, where they come from. You are just subjected to them in the same sense the earth is subjected to weather. You just can't even conceive preventing feelings from being there. Not dwelling on that very nature long enough, that's how you maintain the fully gratuitous attitude of resisting feelings or indulging feelings. Because any attitude towards feeling implies, as we said, the assumption that you can affect those feelings, either through prolonging them or getting rid of them. But you realize that whether you're trying to prolong them or get rid of them, that is secondary to the presently enduring feeling that has arisen on its own. If you stop ignoring that, these attitudes will fade. That's why ignorance cannot be undone accidentally. You cannot accidentally stumble upon the answer of the universe that will solve and prevent you from suffering ever again. Because it's not a mistake, it's an attitude that you maintain through your attitude. So avidya is the cause for more avidya. Ignoring is the reason that there is ignoring. Attitude of ignoring. Ignoring what? Ignoring the most fundamental, present, right in your face, nature of the five aggregates. The most fundamental nature of the feeling. Not dwelling on it long enough, or not dwelling on it at all. You could see how different this approach is, this approach towards meditation is, than what you will be commonly doing when you're practicing focusing or concentration through some technique. But then you can also see which one of the two methods will more likely result in your cessation, active ignoring. So, ceasing of your active ignoring of certain truths that are right in front of you. And you can also see it cannot be given to you. Somebody cannot do that for you, make you stop ignoring the nature of the feeling that's present in your experience right here, right now. The most another person can do is talk about it rightly. They will then make you make the right effort. The right effort being recognizing the nature of the feeling, for example, the nature of unpleasant feeling, and see it as an independently arisen, presently enduring phenomena that even if you resist to, that is secondary to it. You have no say in it. So you stop resisting unpleasant feeling, for example, not by deciding to not resist the unpleasant feeling, but by fully overriding it with the understanding that whether you resist or not makes no difference. Resisting is futile. That's how resisting fades. So, ceasing to ignore the obvious futility of your resistance to your present emotional state. So that's how you stop resisting it. Understanding the futility of it. Like seeing it while the presently enduring unpleasant feeling is there. Not just thinking about it abstractly. And if you do sort of fall into abstraction, you go back to concrete thinking. Because there is always a feeling right here, right now. That's the previous talks we've done, like when you ask yourself, like now you might have drifted away with all this information, but you ask yourself, okay, so what am I feeling right here, right now, overall, on the most fundamental level that I can be aware of? At the most general background in your mind, what basis of feeling is there? Am I okay or am I not okay? Am I neither? So any of those answers is the right answer if that's how you feel at the time. So you recognize that basis is something that is not your doing. That basis is something that it's there whether you want it to be or not. So not ignoring, trying to spend as much time as possible towards dwelling on the nature of that basis, nature of it being independent of you, being indifferent to you. That's how you stop maintaining all these gratuitous attitudes towards it. Attitudes that imply ownership, control, entitlement. You have a right for this to not be there. You have a right for this to stay longer, and so on. So those attitudes are simply rooted in you ignoring the nature of things in regard to which those attitudes are being exercised. So you're trying, like imagine you're trying to break through a door. You will keep trying for as long as there is a hope that you can do it. And then suddenly you hear the possibility that maybe there's no need to be breaking through this door. There's no need to get rid of it. And then you understand that truly there is no need. And not just that, you understand that you can't, even if you want to. There's no door, actually, it's fully cemented, concreted metal block. Painted as a door, inviting you to try and break it. That's basically what the feelings are. They present themselves as if they are for you, which is why the attitude of ignoring that they have arisen on its own for you, that's why that attitude is developed. That's why ignorance is beginningless. Things do deceive you in your sense of ownership, because that's nothing other than sense of ownership. You trying to get rid of that which has arisen on its own means you assuming the ownership and the right to have it disappear or stay longer. Like you act as if you are its master and controller. That's inherently the conceit I am and sense of self. So things deceive you into that. They present themselves as if, well, they present themselves there for you. And because of that, you assume that you are. That you are truly, because I am what I am, who I am, because see all these things that are mine. All these things that are for me. And when I say all these things, I mean even the phenomenon of your perception and your feeling. So feeling present themselves as if they are controllable. And that's why you just slot into that trap of trying to control them. And that's why you suffer. As the Buddha himself said, you don't suffer because there is displeasure present, or you don't suffer because misfortune happens to you, and so on. You suffer because there is craving present in regard to present feeling. So, presence of craving means presence of suffering in regard to the feeling. Not presence of feeling means presence of suffering. Absence of craving means absence of suffering. So you remove your gratuitous attitude that was gratuitous right from the start, but because you were ignoring the basis in regard to which you were exercising that attitude, you were not clear, you were muddled about the nature of your feeling. That's why you maintain the gratuitously assumed attitude that these feelings are for you. Because of that, you will be trying to get rid of the displeasure and trying to indulge and prolong the pleasure, and be completely distracted, muddled, deluded in regard to neither pleasure nor displeasure. But by not ignoring it, you stop providing the basis for these attitudes, and eventually they will have to fade, because they require maintenance of ignorance. So that's how you learn to think rightly as well, correctly. As the Buddha called it, the master of his thought. Person who does this, he won't be thinking anything out of greed, aversion, anything out of indulging or trying to get rid of things, anything out of delusion or ignoring, because he has stopped ignoring the fundamental nature of his experience, the fundamental nature of the five aggregates. Ceasing to ignore the nature of the five aggregates ceases to fuel the fire of assumption. And when that burns out completely, gone, what's left there is just the aggregates that have been freed from any assumptions. And these are exactly assumptions. You assume at face value that the feeling can be changed. And see, you have the unpleasant feeling, then you make all these effort actions, chase the experiences that will provide you with the pleasant feeling. But that's a separate experience now. You haven't dealt with the originally unpleasant feeling. It ceased on its own, and now you're experiencing some other pleasure on account of your desperate actions that have been chasing it. But even that feeling of that pleasure has arisen on its own. In other words, it's not a guarantee that the actions towards the world will result in always the same type of feeling. And that's enough to then reveal the nature of its independence of you. And that's why the Buddha said the Puthujjana doesn't know any other escape from the arisen unpleasant feeling except sensuality, as in replacing it with another experience of pleasant feeling, not dealing with the fundamental nature of being affected by displeasure. But if you're not affected, if you cease to be affected by unpleasant feeling, if you cease to resist it in that ignorant manner, why would you be needing to replace it with any other feeling then? You wouldn't. That's why for somebody who is free from aversion, he becomes free from sensuality as well, hand in hand. Free from sensuality is free from aversion. That's pretty much the state of anagami. So ceasing to ignore the fundamental nature of the presently enduring feeling, whatever that feeling is, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And you can cease to ignore when you begin to learn what you have been ignoring. Not ignoring the nature of feeling doesn't mean like you are super aware of I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this every second of your experience. It means the attitude of being muddled, unclear, unfamiliar with its nature has been abandoned. How do you abandon the attitude of that? By becoming familiar. By developing clarity in regard to it. How do you become familiar and develop clarity? By making the effort to do so. By bringing it to your mind. Don't let yourself not letting yourself get distracted, and dwell on it. Dwell on its nature. Obviously, with guidance of suttas and Dhamma talks and so on, gives you pointers where to look for, but you must be making that effort to look for it. Because not looking for it means automatically ignoring it. And it's not about chasing particular feelings or particular issues that might bother you. As we started this whole thing, it's basically stepping back, developing that peripheral vision that will reveal the nature of any of those particular things. So that's why we started this by saying, whenever you were angry or annoyed or whatever else, what was a common thread through all of those experiences? It was that they're unpleasant. What is the common thread to all the unpleasant experiences? Not necessarily just anger or something. Well, the common thread is that you resist it. There is no unpleasant experience that doesn't have simultaneously present resistance in regard to it. Unless, of course, you're already an arahant. So then, anytime any particular thing touched you in an unpleasant way, emotionally, means there was resistance to that. So you have two options here. Try and control, manipulate, prevent the world, or simply remove the attitude of resistance in regard to anything that can touch you. And only one of these attitudes will result in freedom from suffering.